Welcome everyone to Forward Thinking, my new In Conversation TV series. I'm Adjunct Professor Art Phillips. And today we're going to be focusing on the concept of entrepreneurship and work integrated learning. I have a very special guest with us today, Antonio Luciano. Antonio is the founder of Panorama International Productions. He has directed and produced over 5,000 hours of television on various aspects of human interest, lifestyle, drama, situation comedy, variety shows, food, and wine. One of the productions that he has done was super successful here in this country for over 15 years straight on air, variety Italian style. Panorama TV series has been licensed in more than 50 countries around the globe. He is also the author of Italy, A Culinary Journey, and that has been sold globally as well. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Antonio Luciano.
Pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here. Right?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Very much a fan of yours too. Right?
Well, we've known each other for many years, but it's the first time we've been in this sort of an environment.
And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So, what I wanted to talk about today, focusing on students, masters of business students mostly, right, who really would love to hear your story about why you do what you do, why you're passionate about what you do as an entrepreneur, because you are an entrepreneur. You have been running your own business for some time. But I just want to take a real quick step back. Before you actually began Panorama, which is your success, you actually worked for other communication companies. Just have a chat about that.
I did, but it really had I just thought it had a really quite a long start, because when I was growing up, right, I've always been communication oriented. And I used to build my own equipment, starting with, don't laugh, crystal sets. I built my own radios and what have you. And so communication has always been an interest of mine, a hobby. And this led me into doing all sorts of things in my life, and ultimately into forming the company Panorama International Productions. Right? This was actually emerged out of a number of activities that I'd had. I'd worked as a writer for a magazine syndicate, right? And then I worked with Fortune Far East in Hong Kong, right? Was the advertising agency established by Ken Landell Jones. And after a period of time, I came back to Australia, and I was offered a job with J. Walter Thompson in the public relations department.
Right, the advertising agency. Yeah.
They had a public relations division, right? Yeah. And I came in as one of the executives, and I was there for 8 years, and I was asked to take over the operation, which I did for some years. While I was there, I obviously, because of my deep-rooted interest in electronic communications, if I can put it that way, I was always very interested, and I put together for the first time a series of productions, let's call them video productions, right? And one of them was called Slim as You Clean, right? Uh-huh. And this was basically, if you like, an advertorial at that stage, right? Yeah. And we did a series of 13 of these, right? Which again were carried nationally by the television stations. So this, in terms of a practical start to my production activities, we went on to do more and more of these productions for different clients and so on and so forth. I have a very deep tie with Italy and the Italian community, because my father was born in Italy and my mother was born in Australia of Italian parents. And I worked with my father for some years, right, with the Italians, and I felt that there was a need also after the Second World War. There was a need for the Anglo community to understand more about Italian culture.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, fantastic.
So I came up with a concept, and this is of a program that I thought would fulfill the emotional needs of the Italian community, but would also be, and I use this in a very respectful and loving way, it would be a communication tool for the Australian community.
Sure, yeah.
So we put together this particular concept, right? Variety Italian style. At that time, I'd married, and my wife, Anne, she was not Italian, but she was very much a European, right? And we actually put the production together, right? And it was made up of variety material, right? It was made up of documentaries, and it was made up of news, right? At that particular time, the television networks, right, were very strict in their attitude to, let's call it space farming, right? Space farming, in other words, for selling advertising space.
Sure,
right?
okay, yeah, I see, yeah, yeah.
So we were able to make an arrangement, and this was history, in fact, an arrangement with Network 10 here, right, on the basis that we paid a sponsorship fee, and we provided the program to them. It was a 1-hour program, and we were to support it with our own advertorial, our own advertising, right? So in fact, from a simple production, it became very much a commercial enterprise.
So when you went to Network 10, that's where it aired, yeah? Did you have the entire concept, sort of scripted up in a draft form, sort of a business plan, if you want to call that?
Yes, I did. And in fact, we went to the network with a plan. And in fact, they said, well, come back with a pilot, right?
Yeah, sure.
So like so many projects today, you've actually got to demonstrate. It's all right to talk something, because in business today, there are concepts, right? They're great concepts, but they've got to be practical, and you've got to be able to show them, make them materialize. So there would be, in the commercial world, not only in the world of communications, but people have concepts about products. There could be potential finance for such a project, but let's see what it looks like,
Yeah.
right? That's lovely on paper.
So as I understand it, Network 10 gave you a deal, but the deal, which was really quite unusual as far as I can see, is that you also had to provide the advertising.
So what I actually did, which again was history, with the program started to rate. It went to air first at 11:30 at night, right? Okay. 11:30.
What, on a weekend? Or?
It was a Monday night. But anyhow, what actually happened, Italians were sending in letters, look, can you please put it on early?
Because we want to go to sleep.
Because we put our alarm clock on to get up and see the show. True. I then went to some of the provincial stations all over Australia, and as far afield as Kalgoorlie, and we did a deal with them that we would share the revenue with them. We had SAS 10 in Adelaide, TVQ 10 in Brisbane, to actually enhance what we were doing and to fund what we were doing, right? I went personally to all these stations, provincial, to Griffith, for example,
sure.
where there were
big Italian community,
a lot of Italians, and we actually did a deal with MTN9 to actually share the revenue that we generated.
Right.
Okay. At this stage, they put the show on, right?
Yeah.
But we covered it with the revenue that we generated.
I see. Okay.
However, with Channel 10,
yeah,
we were paying.
Yeah, right. Interesting how all that actually worked, because it doesn't usually work that way these days, does it? No.
Well,
yeah.
With advertorial, I think it's quite a different laugh. But I'd like to say that we were very significant.
What do you mean by advertorial?
The publisher would pay, say, look, I want you to talk about this book, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. I see.
And this even on radio today, they talk about Alan Jones and all these people. Right? It's advertorial. It's the same concept.
I
in
see
other
what
words,
you're saying,
a commercial responsible for the content.
A commercial aspect, advertising in terms of editorial, storytelling, really. Let's talk about storytelling, yeah? You obviously have this passion, and I guess the passion is actually, besides broadcast and communications, is creating something fresh and new, but it's all about storytelling, all about propelling something of interest to your audience, yeah? The people that are buying your product or who want to tune into your show, yeah? So when you think of a concept, you explained how you thought about variety Italian style. Talk about the actual assets that you would have to line up to get in on the show. You would probably have various guests. Were they all Italian guests, or were they?
No. The music component, if I can put it that way, essentially was all Italian, whether it be popular artists like Gianni Morandi or Rita Berti, or whether it was or an opera singer, right? It would be in Italian. The music was Italian language.
Right.
The documentary material, right, or the news material, right, was actually of Italy and about Italian things, but narrated in English. In fact, when we did launch the program, we launched it together with my wife and a male presenter. At that stage, it was John Mahon. In fact, I can say that this was the first time on commercial television that there were a duo presenting, right, television. So we, in a lot of ways, we were first.
Yeah. So when you actually put these shows together, the planning of the next episode, you want to call it episode, yeah?
Yes.
Would take how long, and then how would you go about the process?
Well, I would plan the programs sometimes a month, even 2 months ahead, right, of the material, because if I didn't have interesting material, the show would die. Let me give you some idea. If we were to feature in the documentary let's call it a travel log about the Isle of Capri, right? I mean, Australians or the Anglo-Saxon viewer, right, would be just as interested in knowing about Capri as the Italian that maybe came from the Naples area, if I can put it that way. We're talking about Tuscany, right? Documentaries about Tuscany. The Anglo-Saxon viewer, that is would be very interested in seeing what's in Tuscany, what do they do, what do they eat, and so on and so forth. Yeah. We used to do in our post-production, we put together, and we had we'd write the script, and we'd have to do voiceover, right, behind this material before the show went to air. So the actual production process was quite a long process, right? Yeah. Because there was the actual selecting of the material, editing it together as the edit, then the post-production in terms of running the voiceover and doing the mix.
So these two hosts, were they there for the duration of the 15 years?
Yeah.
Same host, yeah.
And Anne and John. John was from Mudgee, a typical Australian, right? He had a series of radio programs as well, right? Yeah. So after about 2 years, right, John was no longer involved. And Anne carried on the show by herself, right, yeah, for all the rest of the years, right?
So the importance of actually finding the right sponsors. I mean, with the type of shows that you were doing with, read about Capri or about Tuscany, I guess you would actually go for the sponsors that, about food and wine and...
It was very, very blunt, because having an advertising agency background, right, we're very conscious of the viewing audience and what have you. Mm. And we knew very much that the advertiser was really interested in reaching people, right? And in fact, we built up such an audience that we got very, very major clients involved. For example, Qantas was a major Qantas. Now, why was Qantas involved? Immigration, right, yeah, was at a peak, and Qantas was very much wanting to promote, right, to the Italian community.
Perfect, right, for them to travel.
Yeah. Going to the other extreme, there was a company called Nanda Pasta, right? Now, okay, and with that in hand, Nanda Pasta were then able to go to Woolworths and say, hey, Woolworths, look, we're on variety Italian
that's
style, right? It comes back to actually understanding your product, understanding your market, right? And the fact that I had a technical background, right, as a kid and what have you, with my years with J. Walter Thompson, not only advertising but public relations and knowing about ratings and so on, enabled me to work with the television stations that they knew that I knew what I was talking about, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the sponsor. We built up from 11:30 on a Monday night. We built up to a very, very sizable audience, and so much so, after about 4 or 5 years, right, they came to me and they said, "Look, Tony, we'd like to get on Sunday morning television." At that particular time, there was only religious programming and a little bit of sport, right? And they said, "We want to use you guys as the way to open up Sunday morning television, right?"
Okay. Yeah.
And they said, "We'll put you on at 11 till 12." Well, that was like heaven for me, because obviously Sunday lunchtime was a time when families, right? A funny thing happened. There was a television series at the time that I'm not sure that if you wouldn't remember it. Anyhow, Harry Michaels was on. He was Greek, right? And he built up this identity through this Number 96, it was called.
Oh,
Number 96.
Oh, of course, Abigail was in that.
Yeah. Harry was one of the presenters, right?
Yeah, she starred in a film that I scored. It was called Sheer Mountain Killings Mystery, and Abigail was in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, because I never heard of her until I scored this film. I thought, oh, who's she? She was in Number 96. It was one of the big shows. Yeah.
Harry then approached Channel 10 about putting on a Greek show. So it was variety Greek style.
Oh, right.
So Channel 10 came to me and they said, "Look, we've had an approach from Harry. We're going to put Harry on between 11 and 12, and we'll give you 12 o'clock till 1 o'clock. And I said, "Hallelujah," right?
Right.
Because this was perfect time, Sunday, lunch, and the Italian. So from there, it just went like a rocket.
So the majority of years was in that time slot for this show of yours?
Yeah.
It was, yeah. So were you involved with variety Greek style?
No, but I knew Harry quite well.
Yeah, okay. And I guess that was okay with you. There wasn't any patent or copyright infringement.
Well,
yeah.
Harry was riding on our coattails.
Our coattails. That's exactly right. That's what happens. Yeah. So the importance of actually, would there have been a way for you to actually, kept that asset with the co-production? I mean, did you actually think about that? Yeah.
You're talking about Harry coming in. No,
Yeah.
it didn't worry me at all.
Okay. Yeah.
Because by the same token, I mean, he was relating to the Greek community, and I think the Greek community and those involved in Greek things, I think they had every right to, to understand their heritage and history and so on and so forth.
Panorama, then, that was the very, very first production of Panorama. I mean, what a great start. 15 years straight on TV. Wow. Congratulations. I mean, not easy to actually get things like that on air these days. And then it wasn't easy either. So you had a unique concept, but then you actually expanded into other things when the show ended. By the way, as an entrepreneur, everything starts and sometimes things end because we are entrepreneurs and we don't have a full-time sort of situation. So things start and they do end. And then once they end, we have to find something else to do. And that's what you did with Panorama Productions. You went into, food and wine shows from all over the world. And so just talking about that, you obviously have to create a business plan, a scope in terms of what you could actually do to get new productions up and running. How do you think about that?
Again, you come back to the concept, right? B, you focus on your target market or your target audience, right? And then focus on who would be interested in that, right? And in this instance, I had two targets. One of them was the Italian government, right? And the other was American television, right? Which I'll tell you about in a moment.
Okay.
And in fact, we were very successful in putting various concepts to the Italian government. And one of them was on the Italian communities in different countries. And they started and they asked us to do a documentary on the Italian community in Australia,
Okay,
which
so
we did.
so immigration focused,
Yes.
travel log. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And we put in quite a few of the identities at that stage. There were people like Transfield, like at that stage, the Bortley wines
Oh yeah.
were
Yeah.
very Nanda pasta that I took. Those sort of, and again, there were Marconi Club. There were various, all the elements that were really represented the Italian community, right? Oh, and from that, actually, in terms of the Italian, the documentary on the Italian in Australia went on to the Italian National Television Network, RAI, and the RAI people approached us, and we did a joint, a co-production, 13-hour, 1-hour episodes on Australia called You Australia for the Italian network, Italian government, which is like the ABC.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
right.
that went around the world as well then.
Yeah. So to take it to another level here, in terms of business plans and how entrepreneurs or business-minded people who start companies actually have to come up with a business plan and the purpose of a plan. Well, the purpose of a plan, number one, is to help you get investors or a bank loan, because people want to see exactly what you want to do. But the other really important reason to have a business plan is to have an architectural foundation for you, the person putting the concept together, so you can see how it's all going to plan out in terms of the executive summary, in terms of marketing, in terms of finance, those sorts of things, right? Talk a little bit about that in terms of any one of your projects, because everyone must be different.
Because we were involved in doing all sorts of production, because I, locally, right, a local agent here, Max Stewart at the time, who was one of the managers of the Network 10, said, why don't you do something on wine? And through Max, right, we made a big plan, right? We spent a lot of time working together, what we do, how much should the producer contribute? If it doesn't contribute, can they give you accommodation? We developed this plan with Max Stewart, right? And we went into production, and as a result of that production, right, Max was able to place that series with the Discovery Network at that time, okay. And then with a whole lot of other networks as a result, right?
Yeah.
But the essential things that we spent quite a lot of time in determining what products, how long we should spend on each product, right? What sort of exposure they would get, right? Material and theoretical aspects were very, very significant. It takes more than one person to put together a good plan.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm very, very thankful to Max and his team. But again, even we talk about the food series, that's right. We had to make a plan, exactly the same thing. It's not just a matter of, of just going off and doing it. And I say to anybody who has a concept, right, yeah, we've all got different concepts. It's also the practicality of the concept and looking at who do you present it to, right? Because it's all very good to have a concept and spend a lot of time to do it, but you really must have someone that you're going to market it to or present it to or would be receptive about that particular concept.
Yeah.
Right? I've always used research, and research is very significant.
Good point, yep.
In any plan, if you've got a concept, right, talk it to as many people as you can to get, I use the term research, to get feedback. And that's just a layman person's. But I used actual market research on a lot of my products just to determine the viability.
Well, it's important to see what's already out there, what sort of competitors
Exactly.
you have, to weigh it up and see, where can you actually make a difference? Where can you put your price line, if you want to call it that, You have to hire the right people. You have to trust the right people that you're hiring to do the job that you want to do. But how important is it for the business owner to know a little bit about every little aspect of the business, from marketing to finance to client relations? Do you think your advice to students would be you should know a lot about all those areas and then hire people to actually do them, so you better understand how to work with them.
To have an understanding of how the formula, because nobody's good at everything. And I come back, if there is a concept, and I say again, you have a concept, the essential thing is to go out and research, find out the viability. Yeah. You might find that somebody around the corner has done the same thing, yeah, and maybe made a lot of money or maybe lost a lot of money, right? Yeah. And then again, then you get, if you've determined that yes, it's a viable concept, yes, I can sell that to Woolworths or I can sell this to Qantas or whoever, right? Then I think you determine the elements that you need and what elements you can provide yourself and what other elements you've got to, I'll use the term, buy in or involve with you.
Once that's done and you've done the research and you feel that it is really viable to do, you obviously then have to be able to fund it or find some finance. That's a difficult thing. As you did with the TV shows, you went to Network 10, they came up with a proposal, you went to other networks. It's really important to have that support and that funding. How would you suggest a newcomer actually sort of does that? Do they have to save their own money? Do they get investors? Partnerships? What's your feeling on having partnerships?
Partnership is the same word, I suppose, as investors. And I think the key to any commercial enterprise, it depends on the size. If it's an idea, well, it's your idea, right? And I think you've got to sell it, right? In terms of funding, I think that a very essential thing is to be able to have some form of, I'll use the term, support, right? Being financial support or a commitment, right?
Yeah.
That to a new concept.
Yeah. Somehow or another to be able to support your idea for X amount of months or the first year, because sometimes break-evens don't actually happen for a year or 6 months. Or
yeah, but you wouldn't go into something for 6 months or 12 months unless you had your finances well and truly locked up.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. Nowadays we even have something called crowdfunding, which I don't really understand. I think it's a little bit bizarre, but there's all those sort of things. So to wrap this up, first of all, thank you for your expertise. I really do appreciate your time and the focus that you've had. What sort of advice could you actually sort of leave with the students in terms of, they're just graduating from their MBA and they're going out in the business world, whatever they're doing, it doesn't matter what the industry is. What's a couple little bullet points that you might be able to give to the student to make sure that they keep their head on straight when they finally get into the business world?
Establishing a contact or seeking to establish a contact in the industry that they're seeking to work in, right? I can't see any other way. We all had to have initial support in some shape or form, right?
Yeah.
But for a newcomer with a concept, you've got a concept. I see a lot of it. They're going to have to go out and try and find somebody that will listen to them, number one.
Well, it's the importance of them being able to deliver their story about how passionate they are, how great of an idea that they believe that they have.
I would think, other than having a personal contact, but even having a personal contact in a company or one of the major banks, whatever it is, you'd have to have a proposal prepared and presented, yep, outlining your concept, right?
Well, that's right.
So
the importance of actually having a written plan, so you.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely fantastic to chat.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.